Hello, hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. Well, if you've been watching my channel for the month of May, you'll notice that the bulk of my content were deck decluttering videos. Yes, I was definitely in spring cleaning mode. I was ready to let go of decks that had served me well for a time, but for some reason, I was no longer reaching for various reasons. I spent some quality time evaluating my practice, my needs and tastes, and examining changes. As in almost every aspect of life, change is inevitable. We change the way we wear our hair or the style of clothes we put on. We change the way we arrange our furniture in our homes. And so do the decks we choose to bring into our homes. In this video, I'm going to share with you some decks that I recently brought into my home. Some are decks that I've wanted for quite a long time. There are a couple that I brought in for a specific purpose, while others are curiosity finds. My tarot journey is only about 3 years old, and in that time, I've been fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of experimenting in my learning of the tarot. For years, I've been trying to expunge the conservative Mormon teachings that have been deeply ingrained in me. Each deck that I've brought into my home, I've been able to have a dialogue with, and each one has helped me to discover something new about myself and move me just a little bit further from the Mormonism I was brought up with. Now, I just wanted to take a little time to express some gratitude to the decks that have left my home and to let them know that their time with me was so valuable and treasured. These are not the first decks that I've said goodbye to, nor will they be the last, as evolution and change are continual. So, with all that said, let's see what I've brought into my home and have made space for. All right, the first deck that I've brought into my collection is a well-established mass market deck. And because it is such a well-established deck, not going anywhere, other decks have taken precedence over it. A Kickstarter, a pre-order, something that I wasn't sure that was going to be around long term. But finally, I've let this into my collection. And it is the Green Witch Tarot, a tried and true favorite of many, many readers. Now, when I started my tarot journey, I was debating between this deck and the Everyday Witch Tarot. And for some reason, I don't know why it was. Maybe it was the bright colors, the whimsy in the Everyday Witch Tarot, but that deck took precedence and I brought that into my collection, always intending to bring in the Green Witch here, but because these decks, they have a different aesthetic, but they're kind of the same, especially to somebody who's very new to tarot, as I was when I purchased the Everyday Witch. And when I was doing my deck purge, I was, really wondering if I needed both of these decks in my collection. I was kind of, even though I have plenty of cute and whimsical decks in my collection, I was wanting to bring in something a little bit more mature, grown up. And, this one with the striped stockings and the pointed witch hat, I thought maybe I wanted to bring something more with a mature pagan, albeit maybe more spiritual aesthetic into it, as the Green Witch seems to have. But from many of your comments, I realized that I think I would miss having the Everyday Witch Tarot in my collection. So I opted to hold on to it. And one of the reasons is also because I love the Everyday Witch Oracle. I know not everybody does, but I do. And I predominantly use that Oracle deck with the Everyday Witch Tarot. And now as I'm just kind of quickly flipping through them, I am glad that I decided to hang on to the Everyday Witch. I think the Green Witch and the Everyday Witch both will have different purposes in my collection. And yeah, I do love this deck. I love the Everyday Witch. And but as I'm flipping through the Green Witch, and I've seen it on plenty a YouTube channel, I think I'm really going to enjoy getting to know and bonding with this deck, assuming that I will. You know, sometimes we see something we like that's totally in our wheelhouse, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So this deck, I'm chomping at the bit to work with, the Green Witch. So yeah, I have both in my collection, but I'm okay with that. And we'll see once I start using this one, getting to know the Green Witch, because I know the Everyday Witch. We'll see if I still want to keep both. Yeah, time will tell. Now, the next deck that I have brought into my collection is the pocket version of the Next World Tarot by Christy C. Rode. Now, I just literally purchased this deck over the weekend. I was in an independent bookshop here in Austin called Book Women. And I went in there because it's right next to my favorite half-price books location. And they had this pocket version deck. Now, the Next World Tarot is a deck that I've always been curious about. And again, because, you know, it was readily available, I never brought it into my collection. Also because I knew it was a larger deck, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to handle it with my hands. This cardstock is really thin and manageable, but if you see the thickness of the deck, yeah, it's a chunky monkey little deck. But I have always been intrigued and just kind of mesmerized by this deck. But again, it's, you know, there's always been a pre-order, there's always been a Kickstarter. And this wonderful deck has always just kind of, you know, fallen down lower on the list. So I have it in the pocket version. It remains to be seen if I'm going to work with this, and we'll see if I feel the need to get the larger deck. Just to, I think I can see the images pretty well here, but this is intricate art. There's a lot going on in many of these images. So if I do get the full size version, you know, I'll definitely be keeping the pocket size, because, you know, pocket size decks, especially if a deck becomes a favorite, you want a portable version to keep in your bag. So this one I'm really excited to work with. And yeah, we'll see if after working with this deck, if I feel the need to add the full-size version. And this is the Next World Tarot by Christy C. Rode. The next deck I have brought into my collection is an indie deck, and it is the Lazy Crow Tarot by Nicholas Kragogi. And I apologize if I'm butchering the name. This deck I've been seeing a lot on YouTube, and it is a very minimalistic deck, those of you who have seen it. And these are the backs. Very simple. Again, I am drawn to these simple minimalistic decks with minimalistic drawings. I find that they are, you know, a palette cleanser. After working with a intricate deck with lots of symbolism and imagery. So I was drawn to this deck, and I always am. I have a couple of these in my collection, but I love the color palette. I find it very, very soothing. I just love these images, and I have been, it's not in order because I've been playing with it a little bit. It's linen cardstock, again, another plus. And it was very economical on Etsy. I believe it was about $35. Of course, you have to pay shipping, but I don't think shipping was that horrible for the deck. And I believe it was coming from the Midwest somewhere, Minnesota or someplace. I find these images just fun. The color palette soothing. The cardstock is a delight for my hands to touch. And I know I'm going to have a lot of fun with this deck. There is no guidebook because it does follow, as you can see, very closely the RWS system. So the Lazy Crow Tarot reminds me of another deck I have in my collection, and it is the Mid-Centurion Tarot by Madame Clara. Those are the fun backs. But you see, it has this funny little minimalism art. Again, a palette cleanser sort of deck that I like to use after I've been using a deck that's sometimes my more obscure abstract decks. These are fun and easy readers that I find that I need for myself and in my collection. But I find that these are different enough that I felt comfortable adding the Lazy Crow. I was just drawn to it. I've seen it for a while on so many channels, and I decided, yeah, I'm gonna bite, and I'm glad that I did. These are both on linen cardstock, and they're fantastic. But yes, the Mid-Centurion is a favorite of mine, and I'm really happy that I have it. But I think that they're different enough that one is not gonna, you know, take the space of the other. I think they're both, yeah, different enough. We shall see. We shall see. When I need a palette cleansing deck, which one am I going to reach for? The next two decks are oracle decks, and they are nature oracle decks. And you saw from my decluttering, I rehomed many oracle decks, but I find this genre of deck is what I'm craving for right now. Now, the first deck is When My Soul Whispered by Melissa Silvaggio, artwork by Jess O'Connor, and this is now published by US Games. It was an indie deck that totally I missed out on, and I'm so sad because, you know, it's totally something in my wheelhouse. I didn't even know about the Kickstarter till well after it came out, and Lisa Pappas already had it in her hands, and by the time I had seen it on her channel, it was too late. But as you can see, the wonderful mass market edition by US Games is edged in this nice matte amber gold, which I love. I'm kind of over, you know, the metallic edging, shiny gilded edging. I much prefer matte. Much prefer a matte edging. This is a very minimalistic oracle deck. Minimalistic white background with just a single keyword, and I'll show you something I already have in my collection which is along these lines. But that deck has been such a favorite of mine. It's an indie deck that I knew I had to get this, and I waited a while to get it, but finally I bit, and I'm so glad I did. Single keywords with a simple image is what I'm craving right now. I find this type of imagery and just a single word is very soothing. It's what my brain can handle. They're quick readers. The keywords quickly work with your intuition, spark your intuition. It's something you really don't have to dig for. And a lot of the times that's what I'm craving. Again, like a palette cleansing oracle deck. And just this these watercolor images reminds me of a little bit of Ciolo Thompson's work, a little bit. Hers is a little bit more fantastical, but these images are so, so beautiful. And they're what I'm craving right now. And I love the size of this oracle deck. It's small, kind of pocket size, a little bit bigger than pocket size, but easily manageable, easily portable. Yeah, it's what I'm craving right now. Now, the When My Soul Whispered Oracle deck reminds me so much of a tried and true deck in my collection, and it is the Roots and Wings Oracle by Kat Riles. And this deck I got fairly early in my tarot journey, and I love this deck. I love it, and I use it, you know, with so many decks. And even if they quote unquote go together or not, you see similar aesthetic. So I am curious to see if one edges out the other, but they're the same but different. There is a little bit more color in this deck, in the Roots and Wings, but you can see how I kind of gravitate towards this type of deck. It's soothing, it's calming, it's simple for my brain. Sometimes I really don't want anything too complicated. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I want something that, you know, challenges me a little bit more. But on the whole, this is what I gravitate towards. So yeah, there was no way I was not going to get this deck. The next Oracle deck is another wonderful mass market production by US Games, and it is Wisdom of Hafiz. It's an Oracle deck with poetic renderings by Daniel Ladinsky, art by Silas Tobal, Oracle by Angie Sullins. Now, I've seen this on YouTube, and I've instantly fell in love, and I knew it was going to be something right up my alley. First of all, can we just gush about the beautiful production value? It's like an old-fashioned letterbox, something that you would keep your letters or postcards in. Extremely, extremely beautiful. Magnetic closure box, these pastel colors, so gorgeous. Everything. Now, this is a glossy cardstock. It does come with a very chunky guidebook, but I fell in love with the back. I fell in love with the backs. This does have that shiny gold edging, but it's all right. It's got beautiful, beautiful imagery. And when I saw this deck, I'm going, oh my gosh, this would be perfect to go with my Tarot of Mystical Moments. What do you say? I think it would be perfect. And in fact, I'm chomping at the bit to work with these two, those two decks, this one and the Tarot of Mystical Moments together. Because with the Tarot of Mystical Moments, I've been using predominantly the Oracle of Mystical Moments, and I'm ready for a change. And I think this one fits the bill. Now, this doesn't have single word keywords. It has more of a phrase. Well, here we go. It does have some. But there are things like trust your wisdom. And I think it goes with the imagery, you know, with the owl here. Take action. We have moving horses. So I don't think it's so vague. You know, sometimes you get the Oracle decks that are so vague. Sometimes you really have to work at combining the keyword or phrase with what you're seeing in the artwork. And this one, you know, the keywords, the phrases, and the artwork totally correspond. Like this one, create, and this one for dance, play, dream wide awake. I find that this one isn't so, you know, so vague and kind of out there. So the guidebook is really good as well. You get full color pictures and just enough content to add to your readings. And to my detriment, I did not know that Hafiz was a Persian poet. So I am very, very anxious to tear through this guidebook. I think this is a winner from US Games for me, and I am so happy that I have it in my collection now. The next deck is an indie deck, and it's one that's a replacement actually for one that I sold. And it is the Terra Volatile. Now, if you saw my, I think it was my first Purge video, I showed you that I had the collector's edition with the two-piece box, the heavier cardstock. I mean, it was really, really a chunky monkey deck, very, very thick. And I told you then that I was planning to pre-order the linen cardstock edition, which they were putting back in stock. And that's what I did. And I have received it now. And you can see down here are some extra cards. But this has a wonderful two-piece box. I don't know if the first edition or the first printing of the linen cardstock version did. The classic version, I think, is what they call it. But this has a beautiful two-piece magnetic closure box. I also did spring for the expansion pack, which I didn't do for the other deck that I had because I think it was out of stock. It may have been out of stock, but I do have it for this iteration. The deck also came with an envelope full of some extra cards. So I don't know how was this supposed to be for a special reading? I don't know, for my personal special reading, because I don't really see how this Fool card differs from the one in the deck. Oh, it does a little bit. The printing, the coloration is different. I can see in the border. Yeah, these are maybe from the first classic edition, and this is from, obviously, the newer one. Yeah, the borders are lighter. These are a little bit more tea-stained. So that's kind of a nice little spiff. But yes, I'm very happy that I did the switch. I really didn't want to have just a collector's deck, a deck I wasn't going to use. It was a very thick deck. I wanted this linen cardstock, and I wanted a deck that I could use, that would be easy to use, because this deck has an extra suit, the suit of vessels, and if I haven't decided if I'm going to use it. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't, probably. But when you add all of those cards together, it's a very, very thick deck. So yes, it had to be on linen cardstock. And that is the Terra Volatile, the new classic edition. The next deck is another Oracle deck. It's a mass market Oracle deck. And this one I wasn't sure if I was going to bring into my collection. I actually waited. I didn't pre-order it. I didn't jump on it. I waited, and I saw plenty of unboxings of it. And finally, I decided it was something that I wanted to add to my collection. And it is the Seed and Sickle Oracle deck by Fez Inkwright. It's a Liminal 11 deck. I know not everybody loves the Liminal 11 boxes. They are kind of clunky, chunky, but I do think they're unique, and I really, really dig them. I mean, the artwork is so beautiful. I mean, this is beautiful. And every time, you take it out of the box, it's just like, ah. And, I'm not a professional reader. I'm not carrying, decks everywhere with me. Largely they stay in my home. So, I don't mind the box. Now, you all probably know what's really unique about this Oracle deck is that you get 2 guidebooks. the Dawn guidebook and the Dusk guidebook, and I'm not going to go into it. This is not an unboxing. There's plenty of them on the interwebbings, but I do have this in my collection now, and I am very, very glad that I do. And if you notice kind of a theme for my Oracle decks, I am just really, really digging this minimalistic art, a soothing color palette. It's what I'm craving. I'm just craving this type of imagery, the colors, and I'm really, really glad that I decided to bite on this deck. You know, the cardstock is a little bit on the cardboardy side. I would say it kind of, if you have the mass market version of Chris Ann's Sacred Creators Oracle, it's kind of along those lines. But these pinks and the watercolors and the purples, the purple grays, the blues, you know, a deck like this, I'm just looking at it now, and you know what I would pair with it? I would pair my Antique Anatomy deck. Yeah, because that deck, it has a minimal color palette. You know, it's beige with pops of color. And I think these colors would really, really go well with that deck. I do. That's something that I'm going to write it down as a combo that I really, really want to work with. But yes, I am so happy. Oh, this is just, oh, these images. Yeah, it makes me really, really excited to work with the deck. And that's something I was missing with some of the Oracle decks that I rehomed and that I purged. I just wasn't feeling excited to work with them, even though they were all gorgeous and wonderful in their own right. I want something that I'm going to be excited to work with, and that I could think of decks, you know, more than one deck that I can use them for, you know, when I'm combining my Oracle and Tarot. And this is just beautiful. So excited to work with this. And that is the Seed and Sickle Oracle deck. The next deck I added to my collection, well, I ordered it. It's not here yet, but I have the first edition, and it is the Mystic Masters Tarot by Danny Mystic. This is the first edition, which I ordered, and I have a full unboxing of it on my YouTube channel. If you are interested, for those of you who are new to my channel. But Danny, and I'll link her channel below, or actually her video where she goes over the differences between the two editions, and I knew I was going to have to get it. I waited a little bit, but yeah. This is on smooth Make Playing Cards cardstock, which is really wonderful. I like Make Playing Cards cardstock. It's easy to shuffle. It's standard tarot size, but she put this on linen cardstock. Now, one of my favorite things in the world are mixed media decks, collage decks on linen cardstock. I think it really, really brings out the texture that you can see in the mixed media art here. You know, she's using so many mediums here, and linen cardstock is just going to bring that out. And then she kind of took some things away, brightened colors a little bit. The backs are different, and I don't know, maybe I'll do a side-by-side, but hers is so good. So I probably won't do a side-by-side when my deck comes in, but you'll definitely see it on my channel. I love this deck. I love this deck. I love this deck. And enough said. So I'm going to be really excited when the new second edition comes to my home and into my collection. And that will be the one that I use. That will be the edition that I use, the linen cardstock edition. And I will put this one safely away, and I'll be very happy. I'm not going to get rid of this. I'm quite happy to have 2 copies of this deck because I love it so much. Now, the last 2 decks that I brought into my collection are mass market decks. Older, not new releases. One is quite a bit older. I think it's from 2013, 2015. And they are the Tarot of Oppositions and the Vice Versa Tarot. Both are Los Scarabeo decks. Now, I brought these 2 decks into my collection because I've been watching another channel, and I have a purpose for bringing these 2 in. But I will save that for its own video where we're going to go into why I brought these 2 decks into my collection. They're older decks. So stay tuned for that. I haven't filmed it yet. I'll get around to it. But I did bring these decks in for a specific reason, and because I had seen them on this one channel. I've seen them so many times, and they just really piqued my interest. Okay, so I am going to make a separate video about why I brought these 2 decks into my collection. Now, on to decks that I used for the month of May. Actually, there were just 3 decks because I really am trying to change my practice. So when I bring a new deck into my collection, I really want to spend time working with that deck or those decks. Back in April, I started working with the Seasons of the Witch Tarot Beltane Oracle and the Moon Void Tarot 3rd edition. Now, this deck, the Beltane Oracle, was in my mega deck unboxing video of decks that were just sitting in my closet during my hiatus from YouTube. So I really wanted to unbox this one, and so I could start using it. And I decided to pair it with the Moon Void Tarot. Now, when you look at the pairing of these 2 decks, you'd say, well, they don't really go together. Sometimes I like to pick decks that are totally off in their aesthetic. Totally off. This has the Moon Void Tarot is a very minimalistic, modern tarot deck. And the Beltane Oracle is just lush with nature and symbolism and just beautiful watercolor art. And you would think that they don't really go. And I don't always choose decks to go together. Maybe I'll pick a random pairing just because I want to work with both decks. And, really an Oracle and Tarot deck don't really have to go together aesthetically to work really well together. And, there's a big focus sometimes on aesthetics. You have to have the right Oracle deck to go with this Tarot deck. And really, that's not the case, because these decks, don't really go together, quote unquote, go together. But they worked fine. I got wonderful messages from this pairing. I got what I needed for this pairing, and it worked. It absolutely worked. Now, I started working with these 2 decks April 22nd. Yes, I know that from my journal. But then I switched the tarot deck out for the Ask the Witch Tarot. Now, you saw this deck in my mega deck unboxing of decks that were sitting in my closet, and I wasn't really sure if I was going to keep this deck. I thought, I had an inkling that I was just going to let this deck go and not really work with it, because it does remind me a lot of the modern day witch tarot, which I love. and some other actually Liminal 11 decks. Now this deck was published by Red Wheel Wiser Books. It is a semi-gloss cardstock. The cardstock is quite thick. And I didn't know if I needed another deck like the Modern Witch, but I've been working with it. Let's see, I was working with the Moon Void, let's see, April 22nd, but then May 11th, I switched over to this deck precisely because I wanted to see if I was going to keep it, if it was going to go into my half-price book bag. But anyway, back to the deck. I'm finding that I'm really vibing with the imagery. It's kind of a cross between the True Heart Intuitive Tarot and the Modern Witch, but it's definitely its own thing. And I'm really liking it because I'm also enjoying working with this deck with the guidebook. It does follow the RWS tradition, as you can see, and I'm just having a lot of fun working with it. And the book is really, really entertaining. The major arcana, there are actual witches depicted, and you get a little bit of their backstory. But yeah, I love the color palette. I find it's quirky and it's fun, and it's an easy reader. Now, is it a deck? Now that I have, you know, the Intuitive Heart, I have the Modern Witch, I have now the Green Witch and the Everyday Witch. Is it something that's going to stay in my collection long term? I would say probably not, but you never know. I found that I have no desire to get rid of the deck. So, yes, I have been working since May 11th with the deck. I'm ready to switch it out to work with something else, but I'm really, really enjoying it. So, yeah, it surprised me. It did surprise me. So I think this deck is great for beginners who want an RWS deck with a little bit modern, mystical aesthetic, a little bit cooler aesthetic. Yeah, I think this deck is a winner. The backs are kind of plain and don't really, I don't think, really go with the fronts, but you know, that's a minor quibble. So that is the Ask the Witch Tarot. So what decks do I plan to work with for June? And I'm filming this on June 1st. So I am going to move out the Seasons of the Witch, Beltane Oracle, and the Ask the Witch Tarot, and I'm going to make room for the Rosebud Tarot. And the Oracle deck, I think I'm going to start pairing with it, will be the When My Soul Whispered Oracle. I'm going to start with that. And I may keep using the Rosebud Tarot and switch out the Oracle and try using it with the Wisdom of Hafiz or Hafiz. I'm sorry, I know I'm mispronouncing it. So I'm going to use these two Oracle decks with the Rosebud Tarot. Now, I have a full unboxing of the Rosebud Tarot, and as you can see, it is a beautiful, intricate collage art deck. That's why I think pairing something very simple with this would be fun. Now, I have beautiful vintage collage oracles that I've already worked with and used, like Divine Muses Oracle would pair wonderfully with this, but I've already used that deck. I know how it works, so I want to use this beautiful minimalistic deck, this new deck that I've brought into my collection. So we're going to start with this and then trade it out for the Wisdom of Hafiz. This is a little bit more intricate, but I think they would work really well together. And then for fun, I'll probably just play with this oracle and bring my Tarot of Mystical Moments in just briefly, just to see how they pair together. But I kind of know that they're going to pair really, really well. And just flipping through these, I think this is going to be another great pairing. Oh, and I just had a thought. This oracle deck would work wonderfully with the Intuitive Night Goddess Tarot if you have that. But for this month, I'm going to work with using this tarot deck and not really focus on the decks I've already worked with, and that I love that deck. But I'm going to be pairing these newer decks together, and that's going to be the focus. But that would pair really great with this oracle deck. Yeah. But this will work great too, and this is what I'm going to use. This Rosebud Tarot is a collage deck, and you all know I love them. Vintage art, collage, mixed media. I'm going to see how it pairs with my two tried and true, the Relative Tarot and the Antiquarian Tarot. I'm going to see where this falls. I think it's going to hold its own, but the proof is in the pudding. So we're going to see, and I will let you know. And I'm also going to be working with the Green Witch Tarot. I've been waiting so long for this deck, so I am chomping at the bit to work with this. I'm not quite sure what oracle deck I'm going to pair with it. I may keep to using When My Soul Whispered, just because, you know, nature, it's beautiful. I may choose to use the Head Witch Oracle with it. Not quite sure. I will probably let you know next month, but I am really, really curious to see if this maybe takes precedence over the Everyday Witch Tarot. I'm quite interested to see if that'll be the case, or if they're totally different. I've had so many of you in the comments of my decluttering video when I brought out the Everyday Witch saying that they're totally different vibes, and I get that. But sometimes still we may tend to like one vibe over the other one. It's going to be an experiment. So this one, the Green Witch Tarot, is a tarot deck I'm definitely going to be working with that this month. So the Rosebud Tarot, the Green Witch Tarot decks, and When My Soul Whispered, and the Wisdom of Hafiz. These are the oracle decks. These are the tarot decks I'm going to be working with for June. There may be one or two that may kind of slip in there just for shits and giggles, but basically I'm going to focus on these decks, get to know them, and just really, really find out where their place is in my collection. There are other decks, you know, that are new to me, like the Next World Tarot, the Lazy Crow Tarot, that I want to spend time with. But I feel to really get to know the deck, at least for me, I have to spend at least 2 weeks minimum working with a deck. Minimum. Sometimes I'll only use, especially with a tarot deck, sometimes I just like to use one deck for the whole month. So, you know, I may use 2 weeks for the Rosebud and 2 weeks for the Green Witch minimum. And they may spill over, you know, I may feel like one of these I may want to work with longer, and that may spill over into July. I just don't know. And, you know, I'm not going to put strict parameters like, okay, just 2 weeks on this one, 2 weeks on that one, and then I have to move on to new decks for July. It's going to be totally organic, and when I feel that I've had adequate time getting to know a deck and developing a relationship, kind of getting an inkling of where it's going to fall in my collection, then I can move on to working with other decks. But yeah, that's how the process is with me. So that is it. That is the end of decks that I brought into my collection recently. After the purge, after my major deck purge, in total, I it's going to be over 80 decks by the time I'm finished. And I just want to say here that all of these decks were purchased with my own money. None of these decks were given to me or by a publishing company for review. I always let you know if that's going to be the case. I think I've been given a total of 5 decks from creators for review, but practically everything else you see on my channel was purchased by me. I've had also a few gifts from people on my channel, subscribers, that were very generously given to me. But basically what you see on my channel has been purchased with my own money. And when that's not the case, I will always let you know. So I want to hear all your thoughts on these decks. If you have them in your collection, if you've been thinking about getting them, how have they worked for you? I want to know all your thoughts. And with that, I will leave you to get on with your beautiful day. Bye for now.